Hello, welcome to the lecturer's desk. Get your medical thoughts cleared before you leave. And please don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel and turn on the notification bell.
Hello guys, welcome back to the lecturer's desk once again. Today we are going to talk about atrial rhythm and migratory pacemaker. How we can identify them on the EKG graph and how to also differentiate between them on the same EKG graph. Now, when we talk of these two, how can we differentiate them? We can differentiate them using our P wave, our PR interval, our QRS complex, and our RR interval. Now, let's look at something here. When we talk of atrial rhythm, the atrial rhythm is a condition in which the electrical impulse of the heart is being generated by the left atrium. Now, the normal sinus node won't generate the electrical impulse, but a different component or a different part of the heart, which is the left atrium, is where the electrical impulse is being generated and then transmitted throughout the entire heart. And then when we talk of the migratory pacemaker, it's a condition in which the electrical impulse of the heart is being generated on different parts of the heart, giving a different forms of P wave. Now, let's look at something here. Based on the P wave, on the atrial rhythm, the P wave is negative on the D1, D2, and then the AVF lead. So if you take the graph, quickly check the D1, D2, and the AVF. If you check them and then any of them is negative, it gives you an idea of an atrial rhythm. Now, let's look at the PR interval. The PR interval for the atrial rhythm is normal. And then the QRS complex is also normal. The RR interval becomes what? Irregular. So if we check this from our previous video, the only difference between atrial rhythm and the sinus rhythm is the P wave. For the sinus rhythm, the P wave is positive. For the atrial rhythm, the P wave is negative. So when you take the graph, you should be able to differentiate between the atrial rhythm and then the sinus rhythm and also the migratory pacemaker. Now, let's look at the migratory pacemaker. But before that, let's look at how we can identify it on the graph. If we take the graph, we have our P wave here. We have our QRS complex, our T, P, QRS complex, T, P, QRS complex. So with this, the P wave over here is negative. How can we know that it's negative? Because the P wave here is below the isoelectric line. Now, this is our isoelectric line. So the P wave is below that. When it's below that, we read it as negative. So you have a negative P wave, a negative P wave, and a negative P wave. On which lead? On lead 1, 2, and then the AVF. So because of that, we say it is what? An atrial rhythm. Now let's come to the migratory pacemaker. For the migratory pacemaker, because we generate the action potential on different points of the heart, we have P wave greater than or equal to 3 different morphologies. You get P wave which are different in their structures. Now, let's come to the PR interval. The PR interval varies. And then the QRS complex becomes normal. We have our normal QRS complex. Now let's come to the RR interval. The RR interval over here becomes irregular. Now, we have irregular here. This one is regular. And then let's come to the graph. We come to the graph. This is our P wave. This is another 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 P wave. The wave that comes. Now, let's look at something here. The first P wave, the morphology of it is different from the second P wave. And then the morphology of this one to be different from this one. And this one to be different from this one. Are we clear with it? So because of that, we say we have 3 P wave of different morphologies on the same lead. So we classify as migratory pacemaker. Sometimes you may get different morphologies, but they are not on the same lead. And if they are not on the same lead, what happens? What happens is you cannot classify it as migratory pacemaker. All the P waves with different morphologies must be on the same lead. Are you clear with it? Now, let's look at something here. For the normal heart rate, which is the 60 to 80 or sometimes 100, is the normal heart rate. This one is less than or equal to 100. Less than or equal to 100. The condition in which it becomes greater than 100, we say it is migratory atrial. We say it's migratory atrial tachycardia. Tachycardia. Migratory atrial tachycardia. When it becomes more than 100 beats per minute. Now, so this is basically what differentiates the migratory pacemaker from the atrial rhythm. We get three different morphologies on the same lead. We get irregular RR interval, and then sometimes we may get more than 100 beats. Now, let's look at condition or certain pathologies that can cause atrial rhythm and then the migratory pacemaker too. Now, for the atrial rhythm, the first one that we can talk about is the ischemic heart disease. The second one that we can talk about is the rheumatic heart disease. The third one that we can talk about is the COPD. And then the last one that we can talk about is the digital poisoning. Now let's come to the migratory pacemaker. Things that causes that. Now, let's look at first one, or COPD. Our second, hypoxia. And then lastly, the digital poisoning. So these are the conditions or pathologies that can lead to migratory pacemaker, and these are also conditions or pathologies that can lead to atrial rhythm. Are we clear with it? Now, so we will be able to identify it. Now let's look at the irregularity. Now, we have the distance between this R and this R. It's not the same as this distance between this R and this R. Do you understand? And this one to and that one. So because of that, we say there's no regularity between them. Now we say this is what irregular. This is also regular. So this gives us an idea of what identifying, or an idea of reading the atrial rhythm and then the migratory pacemaker. So this brings us to the end of today's topic or today's lesson. If you find the class so useful, please like, share, subscribe, and then turn on the notification bell so that anytime I upload video, you'll be the first person to enjoy the usefulness of this class.